Assalamu alaikum to all, may peace be unto you. I'm AR, your energy therapist, counselor, Reiki grandmaster, and life and spiritual coach. How are you today? Due to a recurrence issue that has come up most of the time during counseling and therapy session with my clients, I'm guided to talk about this and share the information with others so that with time we can lessen such occurrences in our lives and the lives of the generations after us. This has been the most biggest cause of problems in society. Do we notice how the mistakes or situations that happened in our parents' lives sometimes also happened to us? Or for those who are more senior in age, do you notice how the mistakes that you have committed or the situations and struggles you have experienced in your lives are also repeated in the lives of your children and your grandchildren, which might have even been a pattern or ritual carried on since the times of your own parents, grandparents, or perhaps were still your forefathers. As an example, let's take one scenario into consideration, and I will apply the conclusions from it as a guideline for us to use as a reference. A woman married a man. They were madly in love. After a few years of marriage, while growing their family with kids, the husband got into drugs with some bad company and became an addict. They were both working and had 4 children, and they quarreled every night. The husband even ended up abusing his wife verbally, emotionally, and physically. He resorted to stealing her money to get his dose of drugs whenever he was out of cash. What made it even worse was that this couple has children. These children saw and disliked what their father did and hated him whenever he was high on drugs and started abusing their mother. The children saw the fights, the arguments, and everything unpleasant between the wife and husband, and how much of a struggle it was to live with an addict as a father. Then, of course, there were also days when things went on just fine, and some days in a month were filled with happiness, laughter, and cheers. To cut the story short, years later, the wife and husband ended up divorced because of the irreconcilable differences with the ongoing abuse and drug addiction problems that could never be resolved. She also got custody of her children, happily remarried, and the children are all now grown adults and married as well. Then she noticed and realized that all her 3 girls ended up with a husband who was just like their father. Her only son is also now an addict and got married to another addict, and they were abusive to each other. She wondered how her children ended up marrying or even becoming someone who is somewhat or somehow a replica of their own father in temperaments, attitudes, or behaviors. Now, I'm going to share the reasons as to why this happened. Okay? So, the mother, as a living soul on earth, disregarded the laws of natural divine order and teachings. In other words, this also means the laws of what is right, or the laws of God or the universe. Living in a state of denial and refusing to make a judgment call of what was an unhappy and abusive marriage will affect her life and the lives of her children both physically and energetically. You see, there is a reason why God placed his commandments and adjudged what is wrong is wrong. To abuse your spouse is wrong, and it is a sin. We should not keep quiet about it and tolerate what is wrong, even though we are very much in love with the person who committed the wrong. We are putting divine and natural order at stake and affecting our energetic body and frequency vibration, especially when we have children around us. We have a great responsibility to educate them about rights and wrongs. We are not just bearing our children for the sake of bearing them. We are also bearing a legacy of our generation through our children. And that is to be the best version of themselves, which is the better version of us, to manifest a civilized, law-abiding, and God-fearing society of the future. 2. The mother tolerated the abuse. She settled for what was very harmful to her out of love. She did not set to take action to stop the abuse immediately, once and for all, or to take the necessary steps to stop the abuse from ever repeating again before finally deciding to get a divorce some years later. She continued to stay in the marriage and continued life as normal, being a loving wife to an abusive husband during the good days. Now, even though she may not have expected her husband to become an addict and to be abusive towards her after marriage, staying in the marriage despite the abuse and continuing with life happily on the good days sets her own energetic and magnetic frequency at the following vibrations. I don't like to be abused and hurt, but it is okay and acceptable as long as I still love him or he loves me. She is therefore allowing the abuse to happen subconsciously due to her inability or refusal to consciously admit that she should not tolerate an abusive husband and she should not let it continue. However, as she ultimately divorced him and married a man whom she lived happily with thereafter, she proved to have personally learned her lesson consciously. Do note I am mentioning the word personally here, which means that she learned the lesson alone when there were 4 other souls who were living in the same household. Had she not been able to or refused to learn the lesson, she would have ended up attracting and marrying yet another abuser or an addict after the divorce. 3. She did not sit down to talk to her children and explain to them in an expressively conscious manner that abuse in a marriage or in a family should not be tolerated and that it was wrong to not take action against the abuse and allowing it to continue. They should not even consider marrying an addict or someone who is abusive or staying in an abusive marriage or family. She also never discussed with her children the reasons for her divorce, as she did not want to be talking ill of the man she used to love. She considered talking about the abuse by her ex-husband and his drug addictions to her children were the act of poisoning her children's minds against their own father. Now, this is where we put a lot at stake here. The notion of not needing to explain yourself to anyone does not apply to everybody. There is no such thing as not needing to explain yourself to anybody, because there are a lot of explanations that we have to do in life where an authority is involved, especially when we believe in God. We need to realize this and start seeing things the way they literally are and not for what is convenient for us, just to ease ourselves the pressure of having to think about what is right. Stop imposing our desires, wishes, and wants on the honest truth. Start seeing and experiencing life with the utmost integrity. Talking about the truth of a situation that is going on, especially in our family, and having to tell our children about what is right and wrong, good and bad, allowed and not allowed, okay and not okay, is not talking bad about your partner, spouse, parent, or a family member. It is about doing what is right and educating them about what is not right for the sake of their future. The mother continuing to stay in the marriage while the abuse was happening and behaving happily with her abuser on their good days allows the subconscious minds of her children to set their energetic frequency vibrating at being abused is bad and it hurts, but it is okay and acceptable to abuse and be abused. As a spouse or a parent, we can abuse, and if we are abused, we can allow it to continue. Being an addict is bad, but it is okay and acceptable to be one, because your wife and children will continue to love you. We can still be happy when we abuse and be an addict, and we can still be abused. Then, what happens? Well, the vibration of our energetic frequency is also magnetic. This is when the law of attraction happens. When that happens, the children as grown-ups will attract those who are vibrating at the frequency of I am an addict, I also abuse. I love people who love me and will continue to love me as an addict and whenever I abuse them. I love and need someone who will still continue to love me even when I'm an addict and abusive. I'm not talking so much about the psychological theories or knowledge obtained through textbooks or material knowledge here. I'm talking about the natural language of the brain, energetic frequencies, and magnetic fields being very much a part of our living body and daily lives. The work of the subconscious mind is to grasp knowledge that is still untapped in the energetic realms. It also stores all the lessons we learned through our life experiences. The problem starts when a lesson is perceived without understanding via conscious verbal expression or physical learning. This is also the reason why, as we all may know, children should never be exposed to any inappropriate materials or life situations before their right age and without the right and proper conscious guidance. Children store everything they see, hear, and feel in their subconscious as they are not yet able to exercise their logical, analytical, or critical minds to logically express themselves and ask questions. They only perceive and act on instinct. They have no understanding of right and wrong, danger or fear. What they see and hear is what is the norm, okay, and acceptable. This is why parenting is not a task to be taken for granted, and the act of explaining is very much important and necessary. So when a mistake, a misdemeanor, or a negative pattern keeps repeating through our generations down the line, we need to start analyzing where, when, who, or what it started with and why it started. Unless, by divine intervention, someone down the generation line is privy to some information or knowledge and therefore able to grasp the lesson to make the right change. These repetitive cycles of negative patterns throughout generations are also what some energy therapists would term as generational curse. The only way to stop and make a change is through the conscious setting of honest and sincere intentions with consistent affirmations and actions. This will trigger a shift in the energetic frequency stored in the subconscious mind into the conscious mind for a conscious understanding of the lesson to happen. The negative patterns will therefore cease to be existent in the next generation down the line and will remain so until one of them decides to turn things back the other way round yet again. In the Islamic faith, there is a verse in the Quran in which Allah says, "Verily, Allah will not change the condition of a people unless they change what is within themselves." Mentioned in Surah Ar-Ra'd, chapter 13, verse 11. The meaning of this verse is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His perfect justice and wisdom, does not change the condition of the people from good to bad, or from bad to good, from ease to hardship, or from hardship to ease, unless they change the condition from within themselves, which literally means from within oneself. This also refers to the thoughts and emotions, that is the mindset, both the conscious and subconscious minds. So if you are in a state of integrity, righteousness, and goodness, and we resort to being in the opposite state, then we will have to bear the consequences of calamities, hardship, struggles with appropriate requital, amongst which is the generational curse or repetitive cycles of negative traits throughout our generation. In summary, to stop a repetitive negative cycle down the generation line is to first acknowledge the truth of what is right and wrong. Second, to acknowledge in truth your own faults and weaknesses sincerely and honestly by saying it out consciously to yourself and those who are involved in the family. Third, to acknowledge in truth, sincerely and honestly, the faults of other parties involved and their weaknesses by consciously saying it out to yourself and those who are involved in the family. Fourth, set an honest and sincere intention to make the changes and declare the actions needed to be taken with the awareness and involvement of all parties concerned within the family. Fifth, take the appropriate steps necessary and make sure that the thoughts, emotions, and actions are all aligned with the intention throughout the whole process. Sixth, be more in touch with the unseen part of ourselves, which is the energetic body or spiritual self. I hope that the information that I've shared with you is useful. If you find my sharings helpful, please subscribe to this channel so that you may be alerted whenever I post new information for sharing on YouTube. Please feel free to leave your comments below if you would like to share your thoughts and experiences. Otherwise, you can find out more about me and my services from my website and social media links, which I've listed in the description box below. Till my next video, may you always be blessed, and thank you so much for watching. Goodbye and take care.